Well, that's the hazards of doing raw, unedited, unfiltered videos. Somebody, probably a telemarketer, had to call at the wrong time. But actually, I'm glad it happened because everyone needs to realize we don't have any really technical or high tech equipment.
Right.
I'm using an iPhone, an old iPhone. This is my personal iPhone to film Dad. I don't write down questions and I don't ask Dad in advance questions before the camera comes on. And Dad can verify it. I don't even tell you what I'm going to do and say, I'm going to ask you this question, this question, and this question.
Right. You just, it's right off the cuff, is what it is.
Unscripted.
Yeah.
That may make some people not really like it, but we're not professionals. This is Dad and his lifetime of stories, and what we're trying to do is have Dad talk about his life and have an opportunity to make a record to where family, friends, and especially future generations can see this. But we'll go back to talking about Mom. Now is when we need a cough button. Another hazard of doing this.
Well, we have holdups every now and then. Things we got to do. But I'm sitting here in my easy chair, just anxious to know what we're going to talk about next.
Well,
Never know.
the reason you sit there in that recliner week in and week out is because that's comfortable to you.
Oh yeah.
And you'd rather sit in that recliner and talk than you would sit on the couch.
Well, sometimes I go to sleep. I got a heating pad that I put behind me at times, and sometimes I'll have an event that come up that if I go to sleep and I get lost to track of time because if it's still light outside, I know if it's still, and I've got a clock that I can look at and see what time it is really. And I know at one point I looked over it one day and I just woke up, taking a nap, I guess, but I saw it was 9:47 or something like that, and it was dark, and I didn't know whether it was A.M. or P.M. And I turned around and uh, got the phone book and started finding out whether it was A.M. or P.M. because my clock really didn't tell me. But the extra clock I had at one time, I didn't have that sonic clock up there that's got all the temperatures and the date, like what day it is, Thursday, or what month it is, and what day it is. Just gives you all the information that you need to really help you.
I think if anybody falls asleep and wakes up and it's dark, you initially cannot figure out if it's daytime, nighttime, or whatever. And um, the clock you got there does actually tell you Thursday, September 19th,
It's it,
2025, and the
it,
time.
it's really good. I didn't
And
know it'd be that helpful.
it's helpful, but it's like we were talking about, and this is the hazard of having unedited raw footage. Mark's going to talk, and he may not shut up.
Well,
Dad was talking about he lost his keys to the room and he couldn't find it, and come to find out he was carrying them around. They're on a little band,
oh
and I looked
yeah.
at him and I said, well, one day I was looking for my cell phone and I had it in my hand. So obviously people get forgetful and do things, and they're funny, but stuff happens. Let me ask you a couple of questions now that I've taken up all this time that people would rather hear about you. About mom.
Yeah.
Did you remember and recall your first date? Can you remember stuff like that?
Well,
Like what'd you do? Where'd you go? Or did you just go over to her house and visit? Or
I think the first date was really probably about, well, it wasn't too long after I met her over there, but she was, I say it wasn't too long because she was, I think about eighth grade or something. I don't remember now what grade she was in, but she's always been a few grades behind me, and I knew that I wanted to go with her, and she'd done 2 years had passed, and she'd grown and filled out, and she was appealing to me, and I went down to cause I had to walk pretty well. She lived right across the track down from Main Street, and I was going down there to see her because I was in the pickup. Have I told this before? I haven't. I was going down there to I think I'd called her, and I told her I was coming to town is what it was, and she still didn't know I was. I didn't. I was going to ask her for a date, but as I went onto the subway there and turned back left on, I guess it was Railroad Street because she lived right next to the street, and the next thing was a railroad track that come through there. Was almost tall as her house, or about half as tall as her house. That's how much the track was up. But as I turned that block to go down there from Main Street, there was another truck sitting down there, and I pretty well knew what it was and who it was, and I got after him, and I kind of full-boarded that old Ford truck that I had going down there, and he saw me coming, and he run and jumped in his truck, and away he went. And he had an international truck that he drove, and he took off, and went down a couple of blocks, turned right, went across the main street where you go to Dice, Arkansas, where he was from. And of course, I was going to take off and go get him, and and he went across the main street going out. And why he did that, I don't know. But anyway, I wasn't about a half a block behind him. And here I went right across there. I wasn't worried about somebody coming. I just went on across there. And he went around this block and turned back up towards the main part of town. And he knew that he was on the Lepanto road there. All he had to do was get on it and head out and run off and leave me, he thought. But anyway, I turned and got behind him. And as we was going out through there, I got to thinking, I said, well, I've got him now. And he was on this straightaway, and for some reason or another, he must not have had that thing on the floorboard. Like I had my Ford truck on the floorboard, trying to catch him. And I eased up right behind him, and I eased out beside of him as you go around. And I said, well, I got him now. About that time, he had more power than what I did, and he just pushed that thing to the floor, I guess, and he just eased off and left me. And I decided, I said, I better just turn around and go back, and that's what I did. And I learned that International Harvester trucks, IH is what was on them, and they were selling them back then. They were a little bit faster than that Ford 51 Ford that I had, and it was and I got to thinking, you know, afterwards about like a dog chasing a car. What you going? And I thought I could whip him out, and evidently the Lord had saved my butt, I guess, from getting in trouble because I don't know how far he had to go towards Lepanto or what because I didn't know exactly where he lived. And after he run off and left me, I said, I'm going to turn around and go back home where I should have stayed, I think.
You didn't even go back to mom's? You went home?
No, you talking about to her house?
Yeah, after you were done chasing him.
No, I didn't. I didn't go back. I said I better go on home while I can.
Well, since we're towards the end,
Yeah.
do you recall the boy's name?
Yes, I recall his name. His name was Mark. That was his name.
Yeah.
And Mark, I say Mark Wade.
Wade. Dice, Arkansas.
Yes.
So you knew his name and where he
Wade. That's what that.
Did y'all like interact through sports, or did you just know who he was because it was a small town?
Well, I knew he and other boys from Dice come over to Mark Tree a good bit. They would drive over there. And,
what did they come watch movies?
Well, they'd come over there and looking for a date.
Oh, chasing girls.
And Margaret Ann finally, see, she was going with him sometimes. It wasn't the first trip he made over there, but I think it was about the last trip that he came back over there, because he knew that I meant business. She was my gal, and get on out of here and leave us alone. But it's kind of funny, I know, to rehash some of the stories and things that we did growing up, and especially in school when you got about to the seventh, eighth grade anyway, you begin to chase gals, I guess.
Well, maybe next time we can keep talking about school times and maybe even talk a little bit more about mom. And like I said earlier, I know this has been a completely different type video, and hopefully you won't have to hear me sit here and do dialogue very much in the future or very many more times. But if you would, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and share it with your other family members and friends. I will see you next week, Dad. Bye.
Okay, bye.